All right, so let's talk money. Today's deep dive is all about charting a course to financial success, and we'll be using insights from FinShot's Money Resolution #7 to do exactly that. It's not just going to be about like generic advice,
Mhm.
but really how to turn those dreams, that dream vacation or a new house or a comfortable retirement, how to actually make that happen. So get ready, because this is going to be both fun and empowering.
Yeah. It all starts with a plan, but not just like any old plan.
Yeah.
It really has to be a plan that's built around what you truly want.
Exactly. FinShots uses these great examples. One is Anand, who wants to build a school, and Tanvi, who sketches out her dream home. It's a great reminder that financial goals, they're not just numbers. It's really about crafting the life that you desire.
Absolutely. And FinShots really emphasizes this power of actually like writing down your goals,
Yeah.
almost like painting a picture with words.
Mm.
When you do that, it's like you shift from these kind of vague wishes to something much more concrete and actionable.
Okay, so we've got these goals, we've got them all mapped out, but FinShots brings up something that we can't ignore, and that's risk. And they've got this analogy about buying a car. Like, let's say you wanna buy a car, and you're aiming for a 20% return on your investments. It's tempting to think like, boom, new car, but that's kind of where things can get a little tricky.
Right. You get that allure of getting rich quick.
Yeah.
But FinShots reminds us that, a lot of those promises, they often come with hidden dangers.
Yeah.
You remember that example they gave, like saving 11,000 dirhams a month, shooting for that 20% return? Well, you might only end up with like 8.5 lakhs instead of the 15 lakhs you needed for that car. So it's definitely a reality check.
Kind of makes you wonder, though, is playing it too safe also risky in a way?
That's it. That's a great question. And FinShots actually touches on that by bringing up inflation. It's like this silent risk, it can eat away at your savings, especially if your savings aren't growing at least as fast as prices are rising. Just think about like how much more things cost now than they did like 10 years ago.
It's wild. So I guess it's really about finding that sweet spot, isn't it? Like balancing ambitious goals with a realistic view of risk and return.
Exactly. And that's where this FinShot spreadsheet comes in. It's like having this personalized roadmap that can guide you through the whole process.
Okay, tell me more about the spreadsheet superpower. How does this actually help someone plan?
Well, first it helps you to, you know, clearly define your goals. Like what do you actually want to achieve?
Yeah.
When? And how much will you need? Then it prompts you to think about your risk tolerance. Like how comfortable are you with those potential ups and downs, in the market? And then finally, it helps you to kind of match your goals, your timeline, and your risk level with the right investment choices.
So instead of just like throwing darts at a board, you're making informed decisions based on your own situation.
Precisely. FinShots even goes as far as to break down these choices based on the timeline of your goals.
This is where it gets really interesting. So FinShots talks about short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, each with a different approach. Walk me through those, which are...
Of course. So short-term goals, these are ones you want to achieve within the next like 5 years. For those, safety is key. So FinShots suggests considering things like debt mutual funds. We can get into those a little bit later.
Okay, so debt mutual funds for the short game. What about those goals that are a little bit further out?
Yeah, so for midterm goals, the ones that are, maybe 5 to 10 years out, it's about finding a balance between stability and potential for growth. So for that, FinShots recommends a mix of debt and equity mutual funds.
Got it. A blend for those mid-range goals. And what about those really long-term aspirations, the ones that are 10 years or more down the road?
Yeah, so that's where we can embrace a bit more risk to aim for like maximum growth potential. And that's primarily through equity investments. Now, while these are kind of general guidelines, um, FinShots wisely points out that protecting family-focused goals is paramount.
That's a really good point. Make you think about things like life insurance, right?
Absolutely. It's about ensuring that, your loved ones are financially secure no matter what life throws your way.
Yeah.
But even with the best laid plan,
Yeah.
life happens.
She sure does. I love that FinShots uses that example of upgrading from a hatchback to an SUV. Like 5 years ago, the hatchback was perfect, but life changes, goals evolve.
That's why regular review is so crucial. At least annually, you should be revisiting your plan and asking yourself, okay, have my goals changed? Are my investments still on track? And as I get closer to a goal, should I be shifting to lower risk options to kind of lock in those gains?
So it's about making adjustments along the way, ensuring that your plan stays aligned with your life as it evolves.
Exactly. Think of it as like checking the map on a road trip. Just making sure you're still heading in the right direction.
Okay, so we've got goals, we've got risk, we've got investments, and we've got this importance of reviewing and adapting. But what about that psychological hurdle we all face? Procrastination. Finchot's mentions this fascinating concept called the Zygarnik effect. What is that all about?
So the Zygarnik effect is this really interesting idea that unfinished tasks, they tend to stick in our minds more than completed ones. Just think about that nagging feeling you get when you have something on your to-do list and it just keeps popping up in your head.
It's like that laundry basket that never seems to empty. But how does this relate to our finances?
Well, if we keep putting off financial planning, that feeling of like, I need to sort this out just
Yeah.
kind of hangs over us. Finshots suggest that by actually like taking that first step and starting, that can help break the cycle and relieve a lot of that stress.
So, by tuning into this deep dive, our listeners, they've already made a move in the right direction. They've started. Now, we talked about debt mutual funds for short-term goals. Could you break those down a bit further? They sound a bit intimidating to someone new to investing.
It might sound complex, but the idea is actually pretty simple. So debt mutual funds pool money from investors like yourself, and then they use that money to buy things like government bonds or corporate bonds. Essentially, they're lending money to these entities, and in return, the fund receives interest payments, which are then passed on to the investors.
Oh, so it's kind of like being the bank, but with a team of experts managing those loans.
That's a great way to put it. And because these investments are generally considered to be lower risk, they're often recommended for those short-term goals where preserving your initial investment is the priority.
That makes sense. Now, for those midterm goals, FinShots suggests a mix of debt and equity mutual funds. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, remember that balance we were talking about. With those midterm goals, you have a little bit more time to ride out some of those market fluctuations. Equity mutual funds invest in stocks,
Hmm.
which tend to have higher growth potential. But they also come with more risk. So by combining them with the stability of those debt mutual funds, you're really aiming for that perfect mix of steady growth and the potential for bigger returns.
Okay, so it's like having a diversified team, each player with their own strengths. Debt mutual funds provide that steady defense, while equity mutual funds are going for those big offensive plays.
I like that analogy. And then for those long-term goals, we shift the focus even more towards those equity investments.
Because over a longer period, we have more time to recover from any dips in the market and let those investments grow.
Exactly. But FinShots also makes it very clear, no matter how carefully you plan, life rarely goes exactly as expected.
And this is where we circle back to that idea of regular review and adaptation, right?
Yeah.
Our SUV might turn into a minivan. Our goals might shift.
Precisely. You need to check in on your plan at least annually and just ask yourself, have my goals changed? Do my investments still align with those goals? And am I approaching a milestone where I should maybe shift to some low-risk options to lock in some of those gains?
So it's like making sure you're still on course. You wouldn't just set sail and never check your compass, would you?
Not if you want to reach your destination.
Yeah.
And speaking of staying on track, let's touch on some practical tips for actually implementing some of these ideas. It's one thing to understand the concepts, but how do we actually turn them into action?
That's a great point. It's all well and good to talk about saving and investing, but where do we even begin? What are some simple steps that our listeners can take today?
Well, a good place to start is with that FinShot spreadsheet we were talking about. It's a fantastic tool. It can really help you lay everything out. You know your goals, your timeline, your risk tolerance, and it even helps you pick some investments that match up with those things.
So that's step one, get that spreadsheet. But what about like actual habits? Like how can our listeners make saving and investing a regular part of their lives?
One really helpful tip is to automate your savings. Set up automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings or investment accounts. That way you don't even have to think about it.
It's like paying yourself first.
Exactly. Another thing you can do is track your spending for maybe like a month or two, just to get a really clear picture of where your money is actually going.
That can be an eye-opener.
It really can. Once you have a good understanding of your spending habits, you can start to identify areas where you might be able to cut back.
And that frees up more cash to put toward those goals.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to start small, even if you can only invest a small amount each month. The key is to just get started and be consistent.
Consistency really is key, isn't it?
It is. It's like that old saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
I love that. So we've talked about automation. We've talked about tracking spending. What are some other practical steps that folks can take?
Another one that's often overlooked is to make sure you have a good emergency fund.
Oh, that's so important.
It is. You should aim to have at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses saved up in a readily accessible account. That way, if you lose your job or have some unexpected medical bills, you won't have to dip into your long-term investments or go into debt.
It's like that safety net that gives you peace of mind.
Exactly. And speaking of peace of mind, we touched on life insurance earlier, but it's worth reiterating how crucial it is, especially if you have people who depend on you financially.
Yeah, it's about protecting those you love.
Exactly. It ensures that they'll be taken care of even if the unthinkable happens.
So we've got our emergency fund, we've got life insurance. Are there any other like must-dos that we should be thinking about?
It's also a good idea to periodically review your credit report, make sure there aren't any errors or signs of fraud. And then speaking of reviewing things, don't forget to revisit your investment portfolio at least once a year. Make sure it's still aligned with your goals and your risk tolerance.
Like we talked about before, those goals might shift. Maybe that SUV turns into a minivan.
Exactly. Life is unpredictable, so your financial plan needs to be flexible enough to adapt.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of practical steps, from automating savings to setting up an emergency fund, from protecting our loved ones with life insurance to regularly reviewing our investments. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. That idea that our approach to financial risk can actually be reflected in other areas of our lives. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Hmm.
How that same like comfort level or discomfort with risk can show up in our careers, our relationships, even our hobbies.
It really is. It's like this thread running through all these different areas of our lives.
Connecting them in ways we might not even realize.
Exactly. Like think about someone who's really comfortable taking risks with their investments. They might also be more likely to take a leap of faith and start their own business. Or maybe pursue a career change that feels a little bit uncertain.
While someone who's more on the cautious side with their finances, they might prefer a more stable career path, you know? Something that offers predictability and security.
Yeah, and it's not just about career choices either. Think about relationships. Someone with a higher risk tolerance might be more comfortable with vulnerability, you know, putting their feelings out there, even if there's a chance of getting hurt.
While someone who values that security might look for partners who offer stability, consistency, a sense of safety.
Precisely. It's all about understanding ourselves and recognizing those patterns in how we approach different aspects of our lives.
So it's not about saying one approach is better than the other. It's about self-awareness, using that knowledge to make choices that feel aligned with who we are and what we truly value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just like with financial planning, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress learning
Mm.
and adapting as we go.
It's a journey. And speaking of journeys, as we wrap up this deep dive into personal finance, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. How can these same principles, goal setting, assessing risk, adapting to change, apply to other areas of your life?
It's a great question to ponder.
Yeah.
Can you think of ways these ideas might show up in your career, your relationships, even your personal growth? It's definitely something to explore as you continue on your own path to financial well-being.
And remember, you've taken a huge step just by diving into this topic with us. Knowledge is power, and you've gained a lot of it today. Now go out there and use it to build the future you want. We're cheering you on every step of the way.